Okay, just carrying on a bit about the punting. What's the difference between a knowledgeable punter and a winning punter?
The winning one has some money left. I don't know. I suppose it's the winning punter knows the difference between. They can factor in the price. They know when they're having a good bet rather than it just being a good horse. There are plenty of people that can spot a nice horse. They can read the form book probably better than I can, but they might not be able to bring that back to whether something is the right price, the wrong price, too short a price, whatever it might be. So I think it's that. I think it's having a take on prices and probably a discipline as well. A discipline as to whether or not you should have a bet or not. And everyone has rough patches on that front, don't they? But I think it's probably that final bit of decision making. Once you've done the race, you've looked at the form, you've decided what you think, it's then deciding whether what you think is a good bet or not.
So moving onwards, not content with mastering the form book in the bookmakers, you're now buying and selling horses successfully. Where did the knowledge from that come from? I mean, do you know the stud book as well as the form book these days?
Well, most of the horses that we buy, the pedigree analysis is something that's a big part of our punting as well. I think a lot of horses would conform to the pedigree to some degree. I think we take a punter's mentality towards the buying and selling of horses, and it's probably, we wanted to do it because we thought we could, and being involved in owning horses has been massive fun. I absolutely love it, but we probably we've gone into it something a little bit different to what most people that are looking at, that are buying horses. So your agents and things are going in, they'll be on top of the form, this and that, but a lot of them are buying for someone else. You've got to be able to put that across to someone else. We probably take a few more risks and we buy horses that other people maybe wouldn't want to buy. That's something that we've perhaps done. And we're looking, all we see it as really is another bet, and it's just one that takes longer to come out, and along the way you might have a normal bet on that horse winning if things line up right, but it's just another way of putting the same work that we've already done on form analysis and pedigrees and all of that, and watching. Our main ownership group is the Horse Watchers, 4 of us, and it's called that because that's what we do. We watch horses a lot, and you're looking at things and you're finding angles on horses, and they pop up in a sales catalogue and you think that's well handicapped. If that lined up under this set of conditions, I would want to back it. And I suppose maybe that's how we've done it.
Okay, you say it's a much bigger bet. I mean, we haven't talked about the sort of figures you bet in, but surely this is a much bigger bet.
Yeah, it is a much bigger bet, although you get more than one bite of the cherry, I guess. It's not just done and dusted in the space of a minute or 2 minutes or however long the race is that you've had a bet on. It's not all about one day, is it? And it's a longer term investment, I suppose. And look, you're not going to make money on every horse that you buy in campaign. We try and not keep them for too long. Keeping a horse in this country for a long period of time is quite difficult because the prize money situation isn't conducive to being able to make it pay on that front because of your training fees and things. So we try and buy them well handicapped, campaign them, and then move them on at the time that's right. Probably a bit of a idea that we're not going to sell something on if we think there's a lot left in there, but probably do. You have to let horses go and there's still something left, because otherwise people are never going to buy them off you in the future. A lot of the horses that once we finish with them, they normally go abroad, and we're sort of conscious of that being the case, that a lot of the horses that we've had will eventually get sold abroad rather than over here. Probably because of that view. People have definitely said to me that why would we want to buy off you lot when you've had your time with it, because you've probably had your bets and done this and that and whatever. But I don't actually think that's true. We've sold some nice horses early on as well, but it's kind of become more of a thing that we have to move horses on to be able to buy new ones, because we're not just going to throw money at it. It kind of has to pay for itself along the way.
So your knowledge in that all came from your knowledge of the form book initially?
Basically, and then we obviously Mick Appleby trains most of the horses for us, and we've lent on his knowledge. You know, we can kind of go and look at a horse and see a nice horse from a not very nice one of things, but his knowledge on the soundness of it and things like that, and whether it will stand up to the training that he wants to put them through and all that kind of thing. And we use a vet to check horses out at the sales as well, but we're reliant on someone else from that side of things. But yeah, the work that goes into pinpointing the horses that we're going to buy is basically the same work as what you would do from a punting point of view.
And when I was Googling you guys, I came up with this, I found the slogan, or the saying, buy well, campaign well, punt well. I suppose if you can do that, that's a good business plan.
Yeah, I don't know who came up with that. It's quite good though. Probably wasn't me. My dad, as I said, he was a farmer, and he was a stockman really, and he loved buying and selling things, and there was nothing. He was sort of known among the farming community where we were from that my dad was always buy the bullocks that no one else wanted. He'd buy the ones that looked poor, and then he'd bring them back 6 months down the line, and they suddenly looked a lot better than they used to, or he had an eye for what was there. And Dad used to always say to me and Martin, you make your profit the day you buy it. And buying well is definitely something you've got to do. You similar to punting in a sense. When you're buying the horse, you've got to put your price on it and think that's where I value it. And part of that price is based on where you think you're going with it in the future, I guess. So that's buying well is definitely important. Campaigning well is just standard, isn't it? You've got to put horses in the right races where you think they've got a good chance of winning. We try and plan horses' campaigns out as best we can, and put them in the right set of circumstances as often as we can. And if that lines up to being a good bet along the way, then absolutely brilliant. And yeah, there have been some good bets along the way since we started owning them.
So you play the long game. Are you looking like a game of chess? You're looking 3 or 4 moves ahead when you campaign these horses?
Sometimes, but a lot of the time, when we buy them, we've kind of got an idea of what we think we might want to do with it. Now, it can go completely downhill. You can change your plan completely. One of the first horses that we had, Pearl Nation, he didn't run under the Horse Watchers name, but it was the people basically that are involved in the Horse Watchers largely that own Pearl Nation. And once we bought him, I went up to Mick and I said, right, there's a Air Gold Cup winner, Mick. He's rated 70 something. He's a 9500 horse. He wants dropping to 6 furlongs and whatever. Anyway, Mick started working. He says, you're right, he's a 95 to 100 horse, but he's not an Air Gold Cup horse. He wants further. He's 7 furlongs or a mile, really, which I would have argued at the time, well, there's plenty of 7 furlong horses win the Air Gold Cup, but he turned out being a 7 furlong miler, and he did end up being a bit of he wasn't a Southwell, well, he was a Southwell specialist. He was better at Southwell than anywhere else, but he won on the turf. He won on was it Polytrack back then, I think, at Wolverhampton still. Anyway, he won at Wolverhampton, so he was effective on those tracks, but he was a better horse at Southwell. But he was a 7 furlong horse, and we had a good bet on him, admittedly at a shortish price, the day that he won at Yarmouth, first run for us. And that kind of factor of you were right but you were wrong, you've kind of got to accept, and we trust Mick's view on what he's telling us about how they're working and things, and try and go and watch work as well to form our own views on it.
They've mentioned Mick a few times. This is Mick Appleby, of course. Why did you choose Mick in the first place?
Very good trainer at turning horses around and getting the best out of whatever he had. So if you felt that a horse could get to a certain level, it would probably get there if Mick trained it, and that was the view that we took. He had a brilliant record. The first horse that we had was in a partnership called Rod and Pickle Partnership. It was a cheap horse. Richard Hoyles was involved in that partnership at the start, and I was chatting to Richard regularly about the racing at that point, and we'd narrowed down to a few different trainers, and we were both probably at that point trainer switches that everyone talks about. He's moved to so and so now. That wasn't as big a part. The prices would last a little bit longer, but it was quite apparent even then, very early on with Mick training for sort of the second time, that he was just getting hold of horses from other people and they would win straight away. And there was a horse that had been up in Scotland in a bumper. It had run like a year and a half earlier, and it had shown nothing, and it won at a massive price in a Utoxeter bumper. John Hunt commentated on the race, and I remember it wasn't really going anywhere, and it ran on and won. And I rang Hoylesy when I was driving home that night. I'd been working at Coral that afternoon. And I said, did you see that? We chatted about it in the morning. I said, did you watch that? And he says, yeah, I did. Great result kind of thing. I think it had won at 40-1 from 50s, as I say. And I just said to him, well, that's our man to train the horse then, isn't it? And Hoylesy just said to me, right, well, give him a ring then. Because Hoylesy had horses before, so he knew how everything worked, sort of the ownership side of things, setting it all up. So he dealt with that. I dealt with contacting Mick, and he kind of showed me the way with how to get involved with horses, and we just ended up getting the bug in a big way.
Now, so you've got the horse watchers, Rod in the Pickle and Slipstream, all something you were involved with. How important is syndication, do you think, to you, and how big should it be compared to what it is now?
I think it's massive, and it's something that I'm quite keen to sort of, what's the word? Promote the benefits of. I think obviously owning horses is expensive. It's less expensive if you split it a few ways, and actually it can increase the enjoyment. Part of the enjoyment of us having the horses is our group chat where there's the four of us and Mick mapping things out for the horses, discussing how they're going, discussing what we're going to try and buy. That shared enjoyment of how you think a race is going to pan out. Is it a good bet? What do you make of the opposition when you're running against them? And throwing all of that into the pot and having that social side of things without it being necessarily a day out, but that interaction with one another where you're all on a common cause. And I think that's something that's really great about owning horses in a group. And the way that prize money is in this country, it's not, there aren't that many people that can afford to buy a horse, have it trained, and take up the losses that come along with having a horse in training when the prize money isn't that great and if it doesn't do that well. But if you split that a few ways, then it becomes affordable, doesn't it? It's just another leisure activity in a sense, admittedly still quite an expensive one depending on what level of share you have. We tried to set up a horse watchers syndicate with other people in last year, because the horse watchers is basically four of us. Rod in Pickle is similar with the odd extra person in, but the percentage share's a bit different. Slipstream racing is a different thing that's based at Mick's yard, and it's 3 horses for the winter among 10 people that were current owners at Mick's. We tried to set something up with the horse watchers where we sold some shares, and it went disastrously wrong. We bought a horse that we thought was well handicapped, thought he'd do a really good job. We got half of him sold, we still had half left, and he picked up a minor setback really, and so we stopped selling the shares. We were left holding half of him, and then that horse, the minor setback became something a bit more significant. He needed his knee operating on, so he had that done. We spent the money getting the knee operation done. And when he was on box rest coming back, he basically flipped over in his box, broke his pelvis, and it was irreparable, and he had to be put down. And it put me off in the short term managing another syndicate. That was only last year, and I just felt terrible. You kind of ring people up, and it's the first time that they've been involved with you. They've seen that you've had good success in the past, and they've come in on exactly the wrong one. And we did feel really, really bad about it, and still do. In the short term, that's put me off running syndicates ourselves, but I think it's something we will revisit and try and do again, and hopefully get it right. I am quite keen to try and get people into it and provide an avenue to see how much fun it is. I think it's something that more people that are racing fans should have a go at and accept that they can actually afford it. And there are already great syndicates out there, aren't there? There's loads of them that are doing really well, so hopefully people keep on joining up to those. If we decide to throw something into the mix along the way, then hopefully we'll attract a few people as well.
Okay, now to conclude, really, we've taught you're successful with everything you've done, pretty much.
Well, I failed at football.
Well, but you still were in Ealing now. You're coming down to do a shift at Racing TV. I mean, why do you bother with that?
I enjoy it, for one. I really enjoy it. I enjoy working. And people will often say to me, like, if you're winning money betting, why are you working still? What's the point? One is that I'm not winning enough betting to just do nothing else. I probably could, but I want to do other things. I probably could have a wage from it, but I've got a young family that I want my little boy to sort of have plenty along the way. And working doesn't bother me. My wife doesn't work. She's extremely supportive of what I do, and she lets me put all the time into it, and it works better for the work that I do all dovetails in with the punting. So the buying and the selling of the horses, the campaigning of them, the TV work that I do. I still do some previews for Coral bookmakers on a Monday. I normally go in there, and so I'm doing those things, and I really enjoy it. When I go into Coral, it's mates that I've had for 10, 15 years that are running it. So I go in there and I see them. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't see them. I wouldn't socialise with them because I live a fair way off. The TV side of things, I enjoy working with people. I think you learn a lot talking to people, listening to what they do, and how they think, and it takes the pressure off having to win. You know, if I don't want to have a bet for 2 weeks because I'm too busy with other things, I don't have to. If I don't feel like sitting in the office and betting that day, I don't actually have to. Because I've got an income from a job, and it takes away the pressure of having to win betting. And I don't know whether or not I would win with that pressure of having to win. It becomes a different beast, I think, at that point where you don't have another stream of income. I think Dave Neveson said to me years and years and years ago, scared money never wins. And I reckon that if you go on a losing run that everyone goes on, and the mortgage is to pay and the bills are to pay and whatever, it becomes a bit harder at that point to keep on throwing the bank at it, doesn't it, to make sure they're paid. Whereas if you do something else to pay them, then that's just on the side, and for me it makes it more enjoyable. And as I say, I'm not sure that I would win without working because of the different mental pressure it would put on me.
Okay, then finally, you've got horses in training. You've been in training yourself. The Great North Run, have you trained on?
I've done a couple of runs since, yeah. I didn't really stay in the Great North Run, but my training had probably been over a little bit too short. I flew first 10 miles and then I was struggling a little bit at the end, but no, I will train on. I've got no plans on stepping up in trip, and I'll probably be dropping back in trip.
Brilliant. Well, Chris Dixon, thank you very much.
Cheers, Sam.